can do at quarterback. They've just grinded out some victories this season. They beat Brigham Young 7-6, and they went to New Mexico against a much improved Lobo squad and snuck out of there 32-29. Went into a tough environment at Southern Miss, Brett Favre's old school, and they beat them pretty badly, 40-14. So you look at the rest of Boise State's schedule, really no question they should go undefeated the rest of the way, as well as Louisiana Tech if they can get by Texas A&M. It set up a very interesting Western Athletic Conference championship game between the Boise State Broncos and the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs. So certainly some excitement coming out of the Western Athletic Conference. You don't get excitement out of those lower conferences every day, those non-BCS conferences, but certainly some excitement there for WAC fans. Let's look ahead to the weekend that is upon us. Saturday, October 13th, 2012. That is when most of the top 25 teams will be playing. Alabama visits new SEC member Missouri. The SEC has not fared well with Missouri so far. They're 0-3 since joining the SEC, and you should probably expect that to go to 0-4 with Bama coming to town this weekend. South Carolina visits LSU. This is another huge, huge game, especially for the Gamecocks, because if the Gamecocks can go to LSU and beat the Tigers, it's going to be a big statement towards their national championship hopes. With Oregon not playing this week, if South Carolina could go into LSU and pull out a victory, there's no doubt in my mind a lot of voters will be vying for the Gamecocks to take over as the number 2 team in the nation. South Carolina has looked absolutely fantastic so far this year. Of course, they check in at number 3, one of the best teams in the best conference, the SEC. Connor Shaw's been absolutely phenomenal at quarterback, and Marcus Lattimore, coming off the injury that he had last season, has looked like the same Marcus Lattimore from a couple years back. Steve Spurrier's done a fantastic job coaching this bunch up in Columbia, South Carolina, and it's just going to be a huge opportunity for them this weekend. As for LSU, LSU really needs this victory as well. Their national championship hopes are being held on by a thread after the loss to Florida. If they win this game, they could possibly get back into the top 5, but it's certainly going to be tough for the Tigers to do anything BCS Bowl-wise if they do not take care of business at home this weekend against the Gamecocks. Meanwhile, Florida at number 4 will visit Vanderbilt. Vandy, a team that nearly upset South Carolina on the first game of the season, but don't expect any upsets in this game. I expect Florida to come out of Vanderbilt with a pretty big win. West Virginia and Heisman leading candidate Geno Smith visit Texas Tech. Texas Tech coming off their first loss of the season against Oklahoma. They were pummeled by Landry Jones and his team. Shouldn't expect anything different in this one. Texas Tech doesn't have the best defense in the world, and if you don't have the best defense in the world, well, Geno Smith's going to throw all over you. West Virginia's going to come and beat Texas Tech this weekend by a pretty good amount. Kansas State visits Iowa State. Iowa State coming off a huge win at TCU. We'll talk about TCU momentarily after we go over the games for this weekend. But Kansas State, Colin Klein, they just look too good this year. Kansas State, definitely a team that's probably going to go to the Big 12 championship game if they can stay healthy. Kansas State goes to Iowa State and beats the Cyclones this weekend. Another big game. Stanford visits Notre Dame. Stanford's been really inconsistent this year. Really inconsistent. They had a 3-point win against San Jose State to start the season. Then they blow out Duke. They upset SC. Then they lose to Washington. And then they beat Arizona in overtime. Notre Dame, on the other hand, has been phenomenal. They look great. They look like a top-tier BCS squad. I expect Notre Dame at home to win this game. Ohio State visits Indiana. Let me tell you something about Ohio State. Braxton Miller, these guys have nothing to play for. They're on NCAA probation, but this team put up 63 points at a ranked Nebraska last week. Indiana is one of the worst BCS schools out there. If Ohio State doesn't put up 40-plus points this weekend, it's a disappointment. Ohio State with the win. Oregon State visits BYU. That's another good game. BYU may not be ranked, but they are 4-0 at home. Oregon State will be playing without their quarterback this weekend. And I'm going to put Oregon State on upset alert right now. BYU was ranked when the season started and then had that unfortunate loss to Utah 24-21. And then the next week lost 7-6 against Boise State. So some tough luck losses for the Cougars so far this season, and I wouldn't be surprised if they upset the number 10 team in the nation, the Oregon State Beavers. USC visits Washington. Washington, another team that's been very inconsistent this season, got absolutely blown out by LSU in week 2, then upset Stanford, but then got pummeled by Oregon last week. Keith Price, a fantastic quarterback. Matt Barkley, a little bit better. I expect USC to come out with the victory. Boston College visits Florida State. I think Florida State will be hungry after the loss to NC State and should beat Boston College by a pretty good amount. Boston College is coming off of a loss at Army. Army was on an 8-game losing streak. Texas visits Oklahoma in Dallas at the Cotton Bowl. Always fun when these two teams match up. Half the stadium's orange, half the stadium's crimson. I think Landry Jones and his boy have a little bit better of a team this year. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Ash, the Texas quarterback, the young Texas freshman quarterback, and his Longhorns pull out a victory here. But I'm going to choose Oklahoma in a close game. Louisville visits Pitt. Pitt has been another team that's been very inconsistent this season. They lost to Youngstown State. They're 0-2 in the Big East, but did upset Virginia Tech. That's the love of college football. That's why we love college football. Expect the unexpected, but Louisville will stay undefeated and go 6-0. Tennessee visits Mississippi State. Mississippi State really hasn't fared well against tough competition the last couple of seasons. Tennessee's not exactly tough competition. They're 0-2 in the SEC after being ranked earlier this season. I expect Mississippi State to come out with the victory at home. Syracuse visits Rutgers. Syracuse, another team that's very puzzling to me. They took USC to the brink, but they also got taken to the brink by Stony Brook, an FCS school. Syracuse visits Rutgers. Rutgers, 5-0, a big surprise out of the Big East this season. A team that I like a lot. Rutgers just can do everything well. They play defense well. They can throw the short ball. They set up fantastic screens. They have big holes for the running backs. Rutgers at home with the win. Fordham visits Cincinnati. Don't discuss it. Cincinnati wins. Here's the game of the week. Everyone's going to say Florida and LSU is the game of the week. Everyone's going to say Oklahoma and Texas is the game of the week. Everyone's going to say Notre Dame and Stanford's the game of the week. This is the game of the week right here. This is the game that I'm going to be watching. Texas A&M at Louisiana Tech. Kevin Sumlin has done a fantastic job in his first year at Texas A&M leading the Aggies. They are 4-1 and 2-1 in SEC play. Meanwhile, like we talked about earlier, Louisiana Tech has been a big surprise, beating 2 BCS schools, and they're going to go for their third this weekend. They're at home this time. I expect all the fans in Shreveport, Louisiana, to be out for this game at Louisiana Tech. I expect Louisiana Tech to beat Texas A&M in a very close ball game. Fresno State visits Boise State. Fresno State has looked very good this year. Outside of the loss to Tulsa, they're 4-2, 2-0 in the Mountain West Conference. Boise State, like we were talking about them earlier, 4-1, 1-0 in the Mountain West. Boise State's at home. It's very hard to win on that blue field as an opposing team. Boise State will get the victory. And finally, Illinois visits Michigan. Illinois didn't play too well against Wisconsin last week. Wisconsin's not what it was. Wisconsin's not even ranked. Michigan and Denard Robinson will get the victory. Real quick, some news coming out of the Big 12 today, and some news that TCU fans might not want to hear. TCU quarterback Casey Pawhall plans to enter an inpatient facility and withdraw from school, Coach Gary Patterson said Tuesday. Patterson said that most of the inpatient programs, such as the one Pawhall will enter, are 30 to 60 days. If Pawhall completes the treatment, the door remains open to him to return to the school and the team next season. Pawhall was arrested for DUI last Thursday and was suspended indefinitely. TCU went on to lose at home to Iowa State. TCU was a team that had Big 12 title hopes, but Paul Hall, a very young, talented quarterback, will be out for the season. He is going to an inpatient facility, and he is withdrawing from Texas Christian University. So certainly a big blow for the TCU Horned Frogs and their chances at going to a big bowl game this season. When we get back, we will be joined by Travis Neff, a member of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. We'll be talking to him about the Major League Baseball playoffs that are ongoing, as well as the comments that Phil Jackson had to make about LeBron James and Michael Jordan's legacy. You're listening to Chris's Corner on Spreaker.com. Welcome back in, everybody, to Chris's Corner. I'm Chris Sylvester, your host, and I would like to welcome in Travis Neff, a member of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. He does a lot of stuff online. Go check his stuff out on the stlouispostdispatch.com. Travis, how are you this evening?
I'm good. How are you, Chris?
Well, I'm fantastic. Thank you for joining my show. You're an expert on Major League Baseball. Give me your take. 1-1 right now. San Francisco is tied with Cincinnati. That game in the bottom of the 8th inning. San Francisco got their run without a hit. Didn't get a hit until the 6th inning off Homer Bailey. Cincinnati, of course, looking for the sweep tonight. They're already up 2-0. They're at home the next 3 games. Do the Giants have a saving chance at going to the National League Championship Series?
No, I do not think the Giants have any chance at all. They are not hitting the ball against the Cueto-less Reds, not taking advantage of weaker pitching, and doesn't look like they're going to win a game in this playoffs.
Well, it certainly is a disappointment for San Francisco. That brings me real quick. We'll go over the other series, and we'll go over some other Major League Baseball news, including the comments that John Daniels made about Josh Hamilton. We'll talk a little bit about what teams should do in the offseason to improve for next season. But what do you think about the new Major League Baseball format? Do you think, obviously as a San Francisco Giants fan, you're not too happy. Obviously as a San Francisco Giants fan, you're not too happy because you lost your first 2 games at home, and now you got to go to Cincinnati for 3 games. Do you like the new format, or do you think teams just got to suck it up and play with it?
I don't necessarily like it, but everyone has to play with a new format, so it doesn't necessarily favor a team. So I can't really argue with the way it is, but I don't really like it.
Now, looking ahead to tonight's matchup between the Oakland Athletics and the Detroit Tigers. Detroit, another team that, won their first 2 games at home, but did not finish with as good of a record as Oakland. But, of course, with the new format, they have their first 2 games at home. Oakland down 2-0. These next 3 games are at Oakland. Oakland's done magical things all season long, but do you give them a chance tonight or even in the entire series against the Detroit Tigers?
I give them a chance tonight, but not in the series. They're going to have to beat Verlander again, and I do not see that happening. They could win tonight against Anibal Sanchez, who has not pitched the greatest this year, but the A's are not going to win the series. It is not going to be a Bay World Series this year.
Well, it's not going to be a Moneyball year for the Oakland Athletics, but certainly it is an accomplishment in itself that Oakland was able to sneak into the playoffs and catch fire late in the season, and obviously playing with heavy hearts due to the death of their relief pitcher Pat Neshek's son Gary, unexpectedly less than 24 hours after his birth. So certainly our prayers go out to them, as well as members of the Oakland A's organization. Okay, the St. Louis Cardinals. We'll get to the matchup that they have with the Washington Nationals, but some disheartening news for the Cardinals. Their lefty starter, Jaime Garcia, was removed today from the NLDS roster after an MRI revealed a strain in the pitcher's left shoulder. Does this really hurt the Cardinals going forward, or do you think they can survive with guys like Loesch, Wainwright, Carpenter, and Lynn?
I don't think it hurts the Cardinals at all. Garcia hasn't been around quite that much this year. He missed about 2.5 months.